That cold morning, no one expected an act of kindness to change everything. What started as another day on the road became a story the whole town tried to explain, and few had the courage to tell. Before we begin, subscribe and turn on the bell. Here, we show that behind the engines and the leather, there are still human hearts. The rain had been falling steady for hours, turning the winding coastal road into a slick ribbon of black asphalt that hugged the cliffs like a reluctant lover. It was the kind of morning where the fog clung to the ocean below, muting the crash of waves into a distant roar, and the air smelled of salt and wet earth. Elena Vargas gripped the steering wheel of her old pickup truck, her knuckles pale against the cracked leather. She was 34, a single mother with calloused hands from years waitressing at the Cliffside Diner, the only spot for miles where truckers and locals could grab coffee that didn't taste like regret. Her shift didn't start for another hour, but she'd woken early, the way she always did when the dreams came. Fragments of her late husband's laughter, cut short by a rig that swerved too late on a night much like this one. She rounded the bend, the truck's wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield, when she saw it. A motorcycle, sleek and black, lying on its side like a wounded animal. The rider was nowhere in sight. Her foot eased off the gas, heart quickening as she scanned the edge of the road. The guardrail was bent, jagged metal twisted inward, and beyond it, the drop yawned open, a sheer 100-foot plunge to the rocks and churning sea. Elena pulled over, gravel crunching under her tires, and stepped out into the downpour. Her boots sank into the mud as she approached, the wind whipping her dark hair across her face. That's when she heard it. A low groan, barely audible over the rain. Peering over the mangled rail, she spotted him. A man in leathers, sprawled on a narrow ledge just 10 feet down, his body wedged against a cluster of jagged rocks. Blood streaked his face, mixing with the rain, and one arm hung limp at an unnatural angle. The patch on his vest caught her eye even in the dim light. The Shadow Reapers, embroidered in faded red thread. She'd heard the whispers in town, outlaw bikers who rolled through now and then, fueling rumors of bar fights and midnight runs. Folks crossed the street when they saw those colors, but Elena had never paid much mind. Life on the margins didn't leave room for judging strangers. "Hey," she called, her voice cracking against the wind. No response, just another faint groan. She glanced back at the road, empty, as always this early. No one else would come by for hours. Swallowing hard, she scanned the terrain. The cliff face was steep, slick with moss and rain, but there was a path of sorts, a goat trail locals used for fishing. Her hands trembled as she grabbed a coil of rope from the truck bed, left over from hauling supplies for the diner, and tied one end to the guardrail. It wasn't much, but it was something. The descent was agony on her knees, rocks scraping through her jeans, the rope burning her palms even through gloves. By the time she reached him, her breath came in ragged gasps. Up close, he was bigger than she'd thought. Broad-shouldered, with a beard matted in blood, and a tattoo of a raven peeking from his collar. His eyes fluttered open, dark and unfocused, locking onto hers for a split second before pain pulled him under again. "Hold on," she whispered, more to herself than him. She looped the rope around his waist, careful not to jostle his broken arm, and secured it with a knot her father had taught her years ago, back when fishing was still a family thing. Pulling him up was like wrestling a fallen tree. Her muscles screamed, rain blinding her, but she dug her heels into the mud and hauled, inch by inch. His weight dragged her forward once, nearly sending them both over, but she braced against a boulder, tasting blood from a bitten lip. Finally, with a surge that left her sobbing for air, she got him over the rail and onto the roadside. He lay there, chest rising shallowly, the rain washing the grime from his face. Elena fumbled for her phone. No signal, of course. The nearest town was 20 minutes back, and her truck was the only lifeline. She dragged him to the passenger side, his boots leaving furrows in the gravel, and somehow maneuvered him into the seat. Blood soaked the upholstery, but she didn't care. As she slid behind the wheel, starting the engine with shaking hands, she stole a glance at him. Who was he? Why was he out here alone, pushing that bike too hard on a morning like this? The Shadow Reapers, townies said they were trouble, ghosts who lived by their own code, far from the law's reach. But looking at him now, pale and broken, he was just a man. Human. Fragile. The drive to the diner felt eternal, the wiper's rhythm the only sound besides his labored breathing. Elena kept one hand on the wheel, the other pressing a rag to a gash on his forehead. Her mind raced. What if he didn't make it? What if someone saw her helping one of them? The diner wasn't a hospital, but old Manny, the cook, had patched up enough drifters to know his way around a first aid kit. And there was the back room, away from prying eyes. As the neon sign flickered into view through the mist, Cliffside Diner, its E buzzing faintly, she felt a quiet resolve settle over her. This wasn't her fight, but walking away. That wasn't her either. Not after losing Raoul to the indifference of a passing world. She pulled into the lot, the truck's headlights cutting through the fog, and killed the engine. The rain drummed on the roof like impatient fingers. Inside, the diner was empty, the scent of stale coffee and frying oil hanging in the air. Manny looked up from behind the counter, his weathered face creasing in surprise as she burst through the door, supporting the biker's weight. Elena? What in the... Accident. She cut him off, voice steady despite the tremor in her arms. Cliff Road. Call Doc Harlan, now. Manny nodded, no questions asked, and shuffled to the phone. Elena eased the man onto a booth bench, the vinyl creaking under him. His eyes opened again, clearer this time, and he rasped, You... pulled me? She met his gaze, wiping sweat from her brow. Couldn't leave you there. He nodded faintly, a ghost of gratitude in his expression, before pain claimed him once more. As the first hints of dawn crept through the windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor, Elena wondered what she'd just stepped into. The Shadow Reapers didn't forget debts, or kindnesses, and in a town that turned its back on the forgotten, this act might ripple farther than she could imagine. But for now, in the quiet hum of the diner, with rain tapping against the glass, it was enough to have chosen life over silence. The doc arrived just as the rain began to ease, his old sedan splashing through the puddles in the lot like a reluctant intruder. Harlan was in his 60s, with a salt and pepper beard and hands that had stitched more wounds than most surgeons saw in a lifetime. Farm accidents, bar brawls, the quiet desperations of coastal living. He didn't ask questions when he saw the man on the booth bench, just rolled up his sleeves and got to work, his kit clattering open on the Formica table. Elena hovered nearby, pouring coffee she didn't drink, her eyes flicking between the biker's pale face and the window where the fog still clung to the world outside. Manny had locked the front door, flipping the sign to closed, though no one would come this early anyway. The diner was their sanctuary, a weathered relic from the 50s with peeling wallpaper and stools that creaked like old bones. Elena had worked here since Raoul died 5 years back, trading tips for a roof over her and little Sophia's heads. The girl was at school now, safe in a classroom 20 miles inland, drawing pictures of the ocean that never quite captured its wild heart. Elena wiped the counter for the third time, the rag twisting in her grip, as Harlan muttered about fractures and concussions. He's stable, the doc said finally, wiping his brow with a stained handkerchief. Broken arm, some ribs cracked, and a nasty gash on the head. Lost blood, but he'll pull through if he rests. Who is he? Elena shrugged, avoiding Manny's curious glance. Rider off the cliff road. Bike went down hard. Harlan nodded, packing his kit. Shadow Reapers by the look of that vest. Town's buzzing about them lately. Say they're running something shady up the coast. You sure you want to get mixed up? She met his eyes, steady despite the knot in her chest. Already am. He lingered a moment, then sighed, clapping her shoulder. Call if he worsens. And Elena, be careful. Folks talk. The door jingled shut behind him, leaving the diner in that heavy quiet that follows a storm's retreat. Sunlight pierced the clouds now, slanting through the blinds in dusty beams that warmed the tile floor. The biker stirred, his good hand twitching against the makeshift sling Harlan had fashioned from dish towels. Elena approached slowly, pulling up a stool. Up close, without the rain's chaos, she saw the lines etched into his face, scars from old fights or older regrets, a jaw set like weathered granite. His name patch read, Jax, stitched in the same faded red as the club insignia. You awake? She asked softly, offering a glass of water. His eyes opened, sharper than before, dark brown like polished oak. He winced as he shifted but took the glass, sipping with a nod. Yeah. Thanks to you. His voice was gravelly, laced with pain and something deeper. Wariness, maybe gratitude held at arm's length. Name's Jax. What the hell happened? Cliff Road. Your bike's probably scrap at the bottom. You went over the rail. Found you on a ledge. She paused, the memory of the rope's burn still fresh on her palms. Pulled you up. Doc just left. Jax's gaze drifted to the window, where the ocean murmured in the distance. Alone? In this weather? Didn't have a choice. Elena sat back, folding her arms. Road was empty, no one else coming. He studied her then, really looked, taking in the flour-dusted apron from last night's baking, the faint shadows under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. Why? Most folks would have driven on, especially with my colors. She shrugged, but her throat tightened. Seen enough people left behind. My husband. He didn't make it off a road like that. Indifference kills quieter than accidents. Jax's expression softened, just a flicker, like a crack in armor. He set the glass down, his fingers lingering on the rim. Raoul, right? I remember hearing. Trucker? Elena nodded, surprised. The story had rippled through these parts, a cautionary tale for anyone who chased the horizon. Yeah. 5 years now. Sorry. The word hung simple, unadorned, but it carried weight. Outside, a truck rumbled past, its horn a distant bleat, and Manny busied himself in the kitchen, giving them space. The diner smelled of fresh coffee now, brewing in the pot, mingling with the faint metallic tang of blood from the rags Harlan had discarded. Jax shifted again, grimacing. The Reapers. We're not what they say. Brothers, mostly vets like me. Lost too much in the sand. Came home to nothing. We ride for each other, that's all. Elena listened, her hand stilling on the counter. She'd heard the rumors. Drugs, extortion, shadows in the night. But looking at him, broken and human, it felt like another layer of the world's judgments peeling away. Town thinks you're ghosts. Trouble on 2 wheels. He chuckled, low and pained. Better than being invisible. At least they see us coming. The bell above the door tinkled then, unbidden. Manny must have unlocked it. A regular old Mrs. Hale shuffled in, her umbrella dripping on the mat. She froze at the sight of Jax, eyes widening behind her glasses. Elena? What's this? One of those... bikers? Accident, ma'am, Elena said quickly, standing to pour her coffee. Just patching him up. Mrs. Hale sniffed, settling at the counter with a cluck of her tongue. Heard they roughed up some boys at the harbor last week. Rough crowd. You watch yourself, girl. Raising Sophia alone. No place for strays. Jax's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, staring at his reflection in the spoon beside his plate. Elena felt a spark of anger, hot and unfamiliar, but she swallowed it, sliding the coffee over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone needs a hand sometimes, Mrs. Hale, even strays." The woman harumphed and sipped, the moment passing like smoke. But as the morning wore on, more locals trickled in, fishermen with salt-crusted boots, a mechanic named Pete, who eyed Jax's vest with open suspicion. Whispers threaded the air like fog. Reapers, trouble. What's she doing? Elena moved between tables, refilling mugs, her back straight against the tide of judgment. Jax watched it all from the booth, silent, his good hand clenching the edge of the table. By noon, the sun hung high, baking the asphalt outside into a shimmering haze. Manny brought Jax a plate of eggs, simple fuel for healing, and the biker ate slowly, each bite a small victory. Elena joined him during a lull, sliding into the booth opposite. "You got family? Someone to call?" He shook his head. "Brothers'll come looking. They always do." A shadow crossed his face, deeper than pain. "Oh, you, Elena. More than words." She waved it off, but inside, doubt stirred. What if the Reapers did come? What if this act of mercy dragged her into their world, away from the fragile peace she'd built? Sophia's face flashed in her mind. Innocent eyes, trusting hands. Yet as Jax's gaze met hers again, raw with unspoken thanks, Elena felt the pull of something real. Connection, forged in the quiet hours after a storm. The afternoon stretched, the diner humming with subdued life. Outside, the road called, engines distant and promising. Jax dozed fitfully, his breathing evening out, while Elena cleared plates, her thoughts a tangle of fear and resolve. In this forgotten corner of the coast, where waves eroded the cliffs year by year, she'd chosen to reach out. Now, the ripples were just beginning, carrying her toward truths she couldn't yet see. The air grew thick with the scent of sea salt and possibility, and in the booth's shadowed corner, loyalty took root, silent as the tide. As the sun climbed higher, turning the diner's windows into mirrors of the endless blue beyond, Elena felt the weight of the morning settle like damp sand in her shoes. The lunch rush brought a steady trickle of patrons, mostly fishermen with wind-burned faces and hands that smelled of bait and diesel. Their conversations a low murmur over plates of chowder and fries. Jax had moved little since noon, his body conserving what strength it had, but his eyes tracked the room, alert beneath the brim of a borrowed cap Manny had dug out from the lost and found. The whispers hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd thickened, coiling around the counter like smoke from a hidden fire. Pete the mechanic sidled up during a break, his grease-stained overalls leaving smudges on the stool as he leaned in close to Elena. "Heard from Harlan already. That one's a Reaper, all right." Jax Harlan, no relation to the doc, thank God, rode with a crew that stirred up the harbor last month. Folks say they were shaking down suppliers for protection money. Pete's voice dropped, eyes flicking toward the booth. "You pulling him in here?" "Bad call, Elena. Sophia comes by after school sometimes. What if they think this place is friendly turf?" She poured his coffee black, the steam rising in lazy curls that blurred his concerned frown. "He's hurt, Pete. Not starting a war." But her words felt thin, stretched over the knot of unease in her gut. Outside, the parking lot baked under the relentless light, heat waves dancing off the hoods of battered trucks. The ocean's roar filtered through the open window, a constant reminder of how close the edge always was. Cliffs, choices, the pull of what lay hidden below. Jax caught her eye from across the room, a subtle nod that said he heard every word. When Pete left with a shake of his head, Elena cleared the adjacent table, her movements deliberate, buying time before approaching. She slid a fresh mug his way, the ceramic warm against her fingers. "You need anything? Pain's bad?" He took it, inhaling the bitter steam, his broken arm cradled awkwardly in the sling. "Worse than sandstorms, but I've had 'em." A pause, his gaze drifting to the salt shaker lineup on the table, like soldiers at attention. Appreciate this. Most would have left me for the gulls. Elena sat across from him, the vinyl booth sighing under her weight. The diner's hum faded to a background drone. Manny flipping burgers, the sizzle of onions, the distant cry of a gull wheeling over the waves. Up close, Jax's presence filled the space, not with threat, but with a quiet intensity, like the engine of a bike idling at rest. Scars mapped his knuckles, faint white lines from fists or fate, and his beard hid a mouth that quirked faintly when he spoke. Why'd you really do it? Cliff Road's no place for heroes, especially not for someone like me. She traced the edge of the table with her thumb, the formica cool and worn smooth by years of elbows and regrets. Raoul, my husband. He was hauling freight one night, rain like today. Semi clips him, driver doesn't even stop. By the time help came, it was too late. I was home with Sophia, 8 months along, waiting for his call. Her voice caught, a small fracture in the air between them. Indifference. That's what kills. I couldn't be that. Not again. Jax's eyes softened, the wariness easing like fog burning off under the sun. He set the mug down, his good hand flexing slowly. Vets know that road. I did 2 tours in the desert, saw brothers left in the dust, waiting for air support that never came. Came home to the same. VA lines longer than supply chains, jobs that look past the ink on your skin. He tapped the raven tattoo at his collar, a shadow shifting in the light. Reapers. We fill the gaps, ride for the ones the system forgets. Not saints, but not monsters. The confession hung there, raw and unpolished, pulling at the threads of Elena's own isolation. She'd built walls these years, shifts that blurred into nights, Sophia's laughter the only light in their cramped apartment above the diner. Friends had drifted, townies offering pitying nods but no real hand. Helping Jax felt like cracking a door she'd nailed shut, letting in the salt air of risk and maybe, just maybe, something warmer. A rumble cut through the afternoon lull, low and growing, like thunder rolling in from the horizon. Elena's pulse quickened as she glanced out the window. 3 motorcycles crested the road, black and chrome gleaming under the sun, their engines a throaty growl that vibrated the glass. They pulled into the lot, kicking up gravel, and cut the motors in unison. The riders dismounted, tall men in leathers, patches matching Jax's, faces shadowed by helmets they didn't remove right away. One, broader than the others with a salt-streaked beard, scanned the diner like a hawk eyeing prey. Manny emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, his expression a mix of caution and resolve. "Company," he muttered to Elena, who stood frozen by the booth. The door swung open, bells jingling sharply, and the men filed in, boots thudding on the tile. The leader, Beard, spotted Jax immediately, his face breaking into a grim relief. "Brother." He crossed the room in 3 strides, clasping Jax's good shoulder carefully. The others flanked him, a wall of quiet solidarity, their eyes flicking to Elena with assessing glances. "Reapers," Jax said, voice steady despite the strain. "This is Elena. She pulled me from the ledge. Owe her everything." Beard's gaze shifted to her, hard lines softening just a fraction. He extended a massive hand, calloused and steady. "Talon. We heard the bike went down, scouted the cliff, found the wreck. Thought we'd lost you." His grip was firm but not crushing, a nod to the fragility beneath the leather. "What you did. That's rare. We don't forget." Elena shook his hand, her palm dwarfed, feeling the weight of their code settle over her like a borrowed jacket, heavy, protective. The other riders, Rook, lean and sharp-eyed, and Diesel, with a limp that spoke of old wounds, muttered thanks, their voices a gravel chorus. But outside, Pete lingered by his truck, phone in hand, and across the lot, Mrs. Hale's curtain twitched in her cottage window. The town was watching, judgments brewing like storm clouds. As the reapers settled around the booth, voices low and urgent, Elena retreated to the counter, pouring waters she didn't need to. Talon leaned into Jax, words muffled but laced with concern. Run into territory. Rivals sniffing around. Can't stay exposed. The air thickened with unspoken threats. Retaliation from whoever or whatever had pushed Jax to that cliff. Shadows Elena didn't want to name. She caught Jax's eye again, a silent question passing between them. Help more? Or draw the line? Her hand trembled on the coffee pot, the metal warm against her skin. Sophia would be out of school soon, her backpack slung over one shoulder, expecting the usual routine. But as the Reaper's loyalty filled the diner like the scent of rain-soaked leather, Elena felt the moral pull sharpen. To shield this fragile alliance, or step back before the world's suspicions swallowed them all. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the checkered floor, and in that golden hush, the first threads of true tension wove tight. Jax watched her, gratitude mingling with warning, while outside, the road stretched empty, once more, waiting for the next bend. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories of courage and loyalty can travel. The Reaper's presence turned the diner into a pressure cooker. The air thick with the scent of leather and engine oil mingling with the fading aroma of Manny's stew. Elena busied herself behind the counter, stacking plates with deliberate care, each clink a small anchor against the rising tide of uncertainty. Talon spoke in low tones to Jax, his broad back shielding the booth like a barricade, while Rook and Diesel scanned the room, eyes lingering on the patrons who'd gone unnaturally quiet. Old Mrs. Hale had slipped out the side door without finishing her tea, her chair pushed back abruptly, and Pete revved his truck engine a little too loudly before peeling away, gravel spitting like accusations. Elena felt their stares, not hostile but probing, as if measuring her place in this unfolding script. She poured herself a glass of water, the faucet's drip echoing in her ears, and took a steadying breath. Sophia would be walking home soon, her small feet kicking stones along the path from the bus stop. The thought twisted in her chest like a loose wire, innocence caught in the crosshairs of choices she hadn't asked for, yet walking away now felt like betrayal. A silent echo of the night, Raoul's rig lay crumpled, unseen and unhelped. Jax shifted in the booth, his face paling as Talon relayed fragments of what they'd found at the cliff. Rex totaled, Talon said, voice a rumble like distant thunder. But the skid marks. Someone nudged you, brother. Not the rain. Rivals from up north. Maybe the Iron Wolves. Been pushing boundaries, testing our runs. Jax's good hand clenched the table's edge, knuckles whitening, but his eyes sought Elena's across the room. There was a plea there, unspoken. Stay or run. She met it with a nod, small but firm, and approached with a pitcher of iced tea, the glass sweating in the humid air. Refills? She offered, her voice even, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Talon glanced up, his salt-streaked beard framing a face etched with years of hard miles. Sit, he said, not a command, but an invitation laced with gravel. Elena hesitated, then slid into the booth's end, the vinyl sticking to her jeans in the heat. Rook pushed a chair her way, his lean frame folding into silence, while Diesel nursed a water, his limp evident as he adjusted his leg under the table. We don't drag civilians into this, Talon continued, eyes on Jax but words for her benefit. But you saved him. That makes you kin, whether you like it or not. His gaze softened, just a flicker, revealing eyes that had seen too many dawns break over empty horizons. Name's Elena, right? Jax says you hauled him up like he was nothing, rope burns and all. She flexed her palms instinctively, the raw skin stinging under the fresh bandages Harlan had left. Wasn't nothing, just right thing. The words felt inadequate, hanging in the space between them like mist off the sea. Outside, the sun slanted lower, painting the lot in amber streaks, and a lone gull cried, wheeling toward the cliffs. Jax leaned forward, wincing at the pull on his ribs. "She's solid, Talon. Lost her man to the road. Knows what it's like to pick up pieces." The admission drew nods from the others, a quiet ripple of understanding. Diesel spoke then, his voice thick with an old accent. Midwest, maybe, softened by years. "We all got ghosts. Mine's a kid sister. Waited for me after the war. Cancer took her while I was stateside. Buried in paperwork. Reapers. We ride so no one's left hanging like that." He paused, staring into his glass, the ice clinking softly as his hand trembled. Just once, before steadying. Elena's throat tightened, the shared ache bridging the gap between her world and theirs. She'd judged them once, from afar, through town whispers that painted them as predators in the night. But here, in the diner's muted light, they were men frayed at the edges, veterans piecing together loyalty where the system had failed. "Sophia's my ghost," she said quietly, the name slipping out unbidden. "She's 7. Draws pictures of bikes sometimes, thinks they're dragons. Never told her about this." Talon's expression shifted, a rare warmth cracking the stone. "Dragons, huh? Good kid. We'll keep it clean here." But his eyes darkened as he turned back to Jax. "Can't linger. Wolves'll sniff us out. Need to move you to the safe house, up the coast. Elena, if they come asking, you saw nothing." The warning landed heavy, stirring the moral churn in her gut. Lie to the town? To Harlan, who might check back? Or speak truth and invite the storm? She glanced at the clock. 3:15. Sophia's bus was due any minute. "I'll get her from the stop," she said, standing. "You all eat something. Manny's got stew on." As she stepped outside, the heat wrapped around her like a blanket, the asphalt radiating warmth through her boots. The road hummed empty, save for the reapers' bikes lined up like sentinels, chrome glinting in the late light. She walked the short path to the bus stop, gravel crunching underfoot, her mind a whirl of what-ifs. What if the rivals came? What if Jax's world bled into hers, staining the fragile normalcy she'd clawed for? The bus rumbled up, brakes hissing, and Sophia bounded off, backpack swinging, her dark curls bouncing. "Mama, I drew a cliff today, in art, with a bird saving someone." She thrust a crumpled paper forward, crayon lines depicting a raven pulling a figure from the edge. Elena's breath caught, tears pricking unbidden as she knelt, hugging her daughter close. The drawing mirrored the morning's chaos, innocence interpreting mercy. "Beautiful, mija, just like you." But as they walked back, hand in hand, the diner's door swung open, and Rook emerged, scanning the horizon with a hand shading his eyes. Inside, the reapers were gathering Jax, movements careful, voices hushed. Talon pressed a worn envelope into Elena's palm. Cash, she realized later, more than a month's tips. For the truck, and whatever comes. His grip lingered, a silent vow. "You're under our wing now. No one touches what's ours to protect." Sophia's eyes widened at the big men, curiosity overriding fear, but Elena ushered her to the back room, away from the leather and low talk. As the reapers helped Jax to his feet, his arm slung over Diesel's shoulder, pain etching his features, he paused by the counter. "This isn't over, Elena. The road. It pulls you in." His voice was a whisper, laced with regret and resolve, his dark eyes holding hers in a long, weighted stare. She nodded, throat too tight for words, watching as they filed out, engines roaring to life in a symphony that shook the windows. Dust billowed as they rode off, vanishing around the bend toward the cliffs. The diner fell silent again, save for Sophia's chatter from the back and Manny's quiet clatter in the kitchen. But the air hummed with aftershocks. the envelope heavy in her apron, the drawing clutched in her fist. Night crept in early, stars pricking the velvet sky as Elena locked up, Sophia dozing in her arms. Driving home, the truck's headlights carved tunnels through the dark, the ocean's murmur a constant companion. She'd chosen compassion once more, but the cost loomed, a shadow lengthening with every mile. In the rear view, the diner receded, a beacon dimming, and Elena wondered if redemption came wrapped in danger, or if loyalty was the truest cliff to navigate. The waves crashed below, indifferent, as the first stars reflected on the wet road ahead. The night wrapped around Elena's apartment like a shroud, the small space above the diner creaking under the weight of settling wood and unspoken fears. Sophia slept soundly in the next room, her breaths even and trusting, the crayon drawing of the raven clutched in her fist like a talisman. Elena sat at the kitchen table, the envelope from Talon unopened beside a cooling cup of tea, its steam long faded. The cash inside felt like contraband, a heavy promise that could buy tires for the truck or groceries for months, but spending it meant accepting the tether, the Reaper's wing, as he'd called it. She traced the envelope's edge with a fingertip, the paper rough against her skin, and wondered if mercy always came with strings that could bind or strangle. Sleep evaded her, the ceiling fan whirring lazily overhead, stirring memories like dust motes in moonlight. Raoul's photo watched from the mantel, his smile frozen in a moment before the road claimed him. Easy grin, eyes crinkled against the sun. She'd pulled Jax from that same abyss, but what abyss had she stepped toward? The town's whispers would sharpen by morning, turning her act into scandal, painting her as fool or sympathizer. Pete's warning echoed, "Bad call, Elena." Yet in the quiet hours with the ocean's distant sigh filtering through the cracked window, she felt no regret, only a quiet ache, the kind that bloomed from choosing humanity over safety. Dawn broke gray and reluctant, fog rolling in from the sea like a hesitant confession. Elena rose early, brewing coffee strong enough to cut the haze in her mind, and drove Sophia to school with the radio tuned low to static-laced news. No mentions of bikers or cliffs, just weather reports promising more rain. At the diner, Manny was already firing up the grill, his face lined with the previous day's strain. "Quiet night?" he asked, flipping eggs with a spatula that had seen better decades. She nodded, tying her apron, the fabric cool against her waist. Sophia asked about the big dragons last night. Didn't push. The envelope was hidden in her glove compartment now, out of sight but not out of reach. As the first patrons trickled in, fishermen shaking off the damp, their boots leaving muddy prints, Elena moved through the motions, pouring refills, clearing plates, her smile a practiced veil. But the air felt charged, every glance lingering a beat too long, every conversation dipping when she passed. By mid-morning, the bell jingled with purpose. Harlan pushed through the door, his medical bag slung over one shoulder, face set in the grim lines of a man bearing news. He slid onto a stool at the counter, waving off the menu. Black coffee, and Elena, words spreading. Pete called me at dawn, said you had Reapers here yesterday. Jax Harlan's one of their enforcers, they say. Mixed up in that harbor dust-up last month. Some supplier got roughed, owed protection. Elena's hand paused on the pot, steam curling between them like a barrier. The diner smelled of bacon and brine, the sizzle a counterpoint to her quickening pulse. He was hurt, Doc. Pulled him from a wreck. That's all. Harlan sipped, eyes sharp over the rim. All? Town's talking. Mrs. Hale swears she saw more bikes, says you're consorting. Sheriff's office might poke around. Nothing official. But folks get nervous, and if rivals are involved... He trailed off, setting the mug down with a soft clink. Outside, the fog muffled the world, turning the lot into a ghost of itself, trucks looming like shadows. She leaned on the counter, forearms aching from yesterday's strain. What do you know about them? Really? Harlan's gaze drifted to the window, where rain began to patter against the glass in tentative drops. Vets, mostly. Jax did time in Iraq, lost a squad to an IED, came home hollow. Reapers formed around that. Brothers watching brothers' backs. But the road's gray, Elena. They bend rules to protect their own, and sometimes that spills over. If someone's after Jax, this place. He shook his head, the words hanging unfinished, heavy as the fog. The moral weight pressed on her chest, a slow burn of doubt. Protect the diner? Lie to the sheriff if he came? Or turn Jax's secret into town gossip, severing the fragile trust? Manny shot her a look from the kitchen pass-through, his spatula stilling, but she waved him off. Harlan finished his coffee and stood, clapping her shoulder lightly. Just watch the edges. You've got Sophia to think of. The door swung shut behind him, bells tinkling like fading echoes, leaving her with the rain's steady rhythm and a knot of resolve tightening. The lunch crowd brought more tension, voices hushed over sandwiches, eyes flicking toward her as if she carried the Reaper's shadow. A new face appeared then, a woman in her 40s, sharp-featured with hair pulled into a severe bun, badge glinting subtly under her jacket. Sheriff Ellis, Elena realized, though she'd only seen her from afar at town meetings. She ordered a salad, no dressing, and ate methodically, watching. Busy morning? Ellis asked finally, fork pausing midway. Elena refilled her water, hand steady despite the flutter in her throat. Same as always. You here for lunch or... The sheriff's eyes were cool, assessing, like sea glass worn smooth by waves. Heard about an accident yesterday. Biker off the cliff. Harlan patched him, mentioned your diner. No accusation, just fact, laid bare in the diner's warm light. Elena met her gaze, the counter a divide of polished wood. Found him on a ledge, pulled him up, brought him here. Doc came, stabilized him. That's it. Ellis nodded slowly, chewing thoughtfully. Shadow Reapers. Not locals, but they've been seen. Any trouble after? No. The lie tasted metallic, but it slipped out smooth, protecting the envelope's promise, the drawing's innocence. Outside, the rain thickened, drumming on the roof like impatient questions. The sheriff lingered, finishing her meal in silence, then left a tip and a card. If you see anything, bikes, strangers, call. Town's safer when we all watch. Her bootsteps faded into the downpour, and Elena exhaled, leaning against the sink, water running hot over her hands as she washed dishes. The act grounded her, suds foaming white, but inside, the churn deepened. Loyalty to strangers pulling against the safety of her world. Afternoon waned, the rain easing to a drizzle that beaded the windows like tears. Sophia arrived with the school bus, splashing through puddles, her laughter a brief light in the gloom. Mama, can we draw more dragons today? Elena hugged her close, the scent of crayons and damp coat filling her lungs, a reminder of stakes beyond the road. As closing neared, Manny locked the front, the diner emptying into twilight. Elena sat with Sophia in a booth, crayons scattered, sketching wings and cliffs while her mind wandered to Jax. Safe now, perhaps, in some hidden house up the coast, ribs mending under brother's watch. But the revelation stirred. In saving him, she'd unearthed her own buried fire, the will to stand where others turned away. The rain tapped softly, a lullaby of uncertainty, and in that hush, compassion felt less like a choice and more like destiny, weaving her into a brotherhood she never sought. Yet as night fell, headlights pierced the fog outside. Not reapers, but a single truck, idling too long. Elena's hand stilled on the crayon, heart quickening. The driver stepped out, silhouette broad against the neon glow, and knocked once, deliberate. Talon she knew without seeing, his presence a ripple in the calm. The door opened to his gravel voice. Elena, we need to talk. Jax, he's asking for you." The words hung, pulling her toward the edge once more, where loyalty and danger blurred like the mist-shrouded sea. Sophia looked up, eyes wide, and Elena nodded, resolve hardening. Whatever came, she'd face it. Not alone, but tethered to the quiet strength of those who'd chosen her back. The rain had softened to a fine mist by the time Elena stepped out, the door's bell a faint chime swallowed by the fog. Sophia watched from the booth, crayons paused mid-stroke, her small face a mask of curiosity and budding worry. "Mama, is it the dragons?" "Just friends, Mija," Elena said, forcing a smile that tugged at her lips like an ill-fitted seam. She ruffled Sophia's curls, the damp strands cool under her fingers, and turned to Talon. His silhouette loomed against the neon haze, leather jacket beaded with droplets that caught the light like scattered stars. The truck behind him idled low, exhaust curling into the night like a held breath. Manny hovered in the doorway, his nod a silent permission to go, the diner's warmth receding as Elena pulled the door shut. Talon didn't speak until they were rolling down the coastal road, the truck's wipers whispering against the windshield in lazy arcs. The headlights carved tunnels through the mist, illuminating fragments of the world, twisted pines leaning toward the sea, the whitecaps below foaming like unspoken regrets. Elena's hands twisted in her lap, the seat's vinyl sticking to her jeans, the envelope's weight a ghost in her pocket. "What's wrong with Jax?" she asked finally, her voice threading the quiet like a needle through cloth. "He's holding," Talon replied, eyes fixed on the road's slick curve. His hands gripped the wheel loosely, knuckles scarred from grips tighter than this. Handles on bikes, triggers in distant sands. Fever set in. Doc's stuff only goes so far, but it's not that. He won't rest till he sees you. Says you need to know something. The words landed heavy, stirring the air between them with implication. Elena's pulse quickened, a steady drum against her ribs, as the truck climbed away from the cliffs toward the hidden bends where the reapers vanished like smoke. The safe house emerged from the fog like a forgotten memory, a weathered cabin tucked into a cove, its roof sagging under moss and salt, windows shuttered against prying eyes. Diesel met them at the door, his limp more pronounced in the damp, a shotgun leaning casual against the frame but unloaded, Elena noted with a flicker of relief. Inside, the air smelled of pine resin and medicinal herbs, a wood stove crackling low in the corner, casting flickering shadows across plank walls scarred by time. Rook paced near the kitchen, his sharp eyes softening as he nodded her in. "Good you came. He's in the back." Jax lay on a narrow cot in the dim room, blankets pulled to his chest, his face slick with sweat despite the chill. The broken arm was splinted properly now, wood and cloth bound tight, but pain etched lines deeper into his brow. A lantern hummed on the bedside table, its glow pooling yellow on the floorboards, mingling with the faint scent of antiseptic and sea air seeping through the cracks. He stirred as she approached, eyes opening, dark, fever bright, locking onto hers with an intensity that pinned her in place. "Elena," he rasped, voice frayed like old rope. She pulled a chair close, the wood creaking under her, and took his good hand without thinking, its warmth surprising against her cool palm. The room felt smaller then, the world narrowing to the rise and fall of his chest, the distant lap of waves against hidden rocks. "You shouldn't be moving," she said softly, brushing damp hair from his forehead. The gesture maternal, instinctive. Talon said fever. He nodded faintly, wincing, but his grip tightened on hers. "Got stories to tell, before it catches up." Outside, the mist thickened, muffling the reapers' low voices in the front room, plans, worries, the quiet forge of brotherhood. Jax's eyes searched hers, peeling back layers she'd kept hidden even from herself. That night on the cliff wasn't just rain. Iron wolves, rivals. They tailed me from a run up north, pushing for territory, but it's personal. Leader's name is Vance, Knew him from the war. Same unit, different paths. Elena's breath caught, the name stirring no recognition, but the weight of it settled like lead. Why tell me? Because you're in it now. He paused, swallowing against the pain, the lantern's light carving hollows under his eyes. Vance. He was there when my squad went down. IED in Fallujah. I pulled him out once. Saved his leg. He came home twisted. Blames the Reapers for not riding with him when he turned. But that's not the half. Jax's voice dropped, raw with the effort, his thumb tracing a slow circle on her hand. Raoul, your husband. I knew him. Not close, but here we crossed paths. He hauled for a supplier we protected. Quiet runs, no questions. Last year before the crash, he stopped at a roadside meet. Told me about you and Sophia. Said you were the anchor, the reason he pushed through the miles. Don't let the road take everything, he said. Made me promise to watch if things went south. The revelation hit like a wave, crashing silent, stealing her air. Raoul, connected, not just to the road's indifference, but to this web of shadows and loyalty. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and unbidden, blurring Jax's face into a mosaic of grief and gratitude. She'd saved a stranger, only to find him woven into her loss, a thread pulling her past into the present. Why didn't you say? She whispered, voice trembling, the chair's armrest digging into her elbow. Pain makes you forget promises. He squeezed her hand, weaker now, the fever pulling at him. But you. Pulling me up. It's like Raoul reaching back. Reapers. We ride for the forgotten. Now, you're one of us. If Vance comes, we shield you. Sophia, too. The door creaked, Talon filling the frame, his silhouette a guardian shadow. Rest, brother. She's got the measure. Elena stood, legs unsteady, the room spinning faintly as she stepped into the front, where Rook offered a mug of tea, chamomile, steaming, its herbal scent a balm against the salt-stung air. They sat in silence around the stove, the fire's pop and hiss the only sound, as Diesel whittled a stick into nothing, shavings curling like questions on the floor. Compassion had bridged the gap, but this truth deepened it. A moral chasm where forgiveness tangled with fear. Elena sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through her chest, thawing the isolation she'd carried like a second skin. The Reapers weren't monsters. They were echoes of her own fight, standing where society faltered. Yet the risk loomed. Vance's grudge, the town's suspicions, Sophia's safety dangling like a frayed line over the abyss. As midnight neared, the mist outside swirled thicker, cloaking the cabin in secrecy. Talon drove her back, the road a ribbon of reflected headlights, words sparse but heavy. Jax'll mend. We'll handle Vance. You focus on your girl. She nodded, stepping into the night air alive with brine and promise. The apartments light a beacon above the diner. Inside, Sophia stirred in sleep, the drawing of the raven now joined by a new sketch. Dragons circling a house by the sea. Elena knelt beside the bed, tracing the lines, her heart a quiet storm of redemption. Loyalty wasn't just given. It was earned in the pull of shared scars, and in choosing to hold on when the cliff called. The waves murmured below, a lullaby of what was to come, as resolve settled deep. Whatever shadows rose, she'd face them with the strength of those who'd claimed her as kin. If this story already has your heart, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena reach more people who still believe in humanity. The days blurred into a tense rhythm after that night at the safe house. The coastal fog, a constant veil that mirrored the haze in Elena's mind. She rose before dawn each morning, the apartment's floorboards groaning under her bare feet, as she brewed coffee strong enough to chase away the shadows of Jax's revelation. Raoul, tied to the Reapers through quiet halls, a promise made on a dusty roadside that now bound her to men she'd once dismissed as road ghosts. The envelope's cash sat untouched in a drawer, a silent temptation, while Sophia's drawings multiplied on the fridge, ravens evolving into dragons with protective wings, her child's intuition sketching the unseen currents pulling at their lives. At the diner, the whispers had evolved into sidelong stares, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Manny kept the coffee flowing, his gruff silences a shield, but even he paused one afternoon as Elena wiped down the counter, her rag moving in mechanical circles. "Harlan stopped by last night," he said, voice low over the sizzle of the grill. "Said the sheriff's asking questions up and down the coast. Biker trouble brewing, scouts from some wolf pack sniffing around." His eyes met hers, weathered lines deepening with concern, the scent of frying onions sharp in the humid air. Elena nodded, her throat tight, but said nothing. The revelation from Jax had cracked something open in her, a grief long buried now stirring like silt in shallow water. Raoul hadn't been alone on those runs. The Reapers had watched his back, invisible guardians against the road's indifference. Forgiving the system that failed him felt impossible, but seeing compassion in these outcasts. It softened the edges of her isolation, drawing her toward a fragile community forged in shared loss. Yet fear gnawed at the fringes. Sophia's school bus rumbling up each evening, her laughter a fragile thread against the gathering storm. By evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the ocean in bruised purples, Talon's truck appeared again in the lot, its headlights cutting through the twilight like hesitant beacons. Elena stepped out, wiping flour from her hands, the cool mist settling on her skin like a warning. He leaned against the hood, arms crossed over his broad chest, the raven patch on his vest catching the dying light. "Elena, need your help. Jax is worse. Fever's breaking him. Rook's out scouting. Diesel's holding the line. But we can't risk the dock again. Not with eyes everywhere." Her heart stuttered, a small tremor in her chest as she glanced back at the diner, where Sophia colored at a corner table, oblivious. The moral pull sharpened, to turn away, preserve the thin veil of normalcy, or step deeper into the fray, honoring the echo of Raoul's trust. She exhaled slowly, the sea air salty on her tongue, and nodded. "What do you need?" "Supplies, painkillers, bandages, from Harlan's backstock. He owes Jax a favor from the war." Talon's voice was steady, but his jaw clenched, a flicker of contained rage in his eyes, the kind born of watching a brother suffer while rivals circled. "Wolves hit one of our runs last night. Took a load, left signs. Vance is pushing hard, wants Jax's head for old scores." The name Vance landed like a stone in still water, rippling through her. Jax's fevered words replayed, same unit, different paths, a grudge festering since Fallujah. Elena's hands trembled as she climbed into the truck, the door thudding shut with finality. The drive wound upward, away from the cliffs toward the cove. The engine's hum a low counterpoint to the waves crashing below. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the wiper's intermittent swipe against gathering drizzle. Talon's knuckles whitened on the wheel once, a brief flash of fury before he spoke. "We don't start fires, Elena, but we don't let them burn us out. Jax, he's the heart of this. Lost too much already." The cabin loomed through the mist, its windows glowing faintly like wary eyes. Diesel met them at the door, his face gaunt in the lantern light, the scent of boiled herbs thick in the air. "Fever spiked at midnight," he muttered, leading her to the back room. Jax lay still, sweat beading his brow, his breath shallow rasps that cut through the quiet like accusations. Elena's stomach twisted at the sight, his broad frame diminished, vulnerability stripping away the leather-tough facade. She knelt beside the cot, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead, the fabric damp against her fingers, his skin burning through it. "Talon," Jax murmured, eyes fluttering open, unfocused, but seeking. "She came?" "Here," she whispered, her voice a thread in the dimness. The room smelled of salt and sickness, the wood stove's embers casting long shadows that danced like unspoken threats. Diesel handed her a basin of water, his limp dragging as he retreated, leaving them in fragile privacy. Jax's good hand found hers again, weaker now, but the grip held a quiet desperation. Vance. He's coming. Dreams it. Revenge for the squad. But you. Raoul's promise. Protect what's left. Tears welled unbidden, spilling hot down her cheeks as she wrung the cloth, water dripping like rain on the floorboards. The emotional turn deepened here, in this shadowed space. Her compassion no longer a solitary act, but a bridge to redemption, weaving her grief into their code. Rest, she said, voice cracking. I'll get what you need. No one's taking you. Outside, the night thickened, the mist swirling with the rumble of approaching engines, distant but closing. Talon stiffened at the window, hand drifting to his side where a holster hid beneath the jacket. Wolves, he growled, rage simmering low, controlled by the loyalty that bound them. Elena froze, heart pounding, Sophia's face flashing in her mind, safe with Manny for the hour, but how long? The confrontation loomed, a moral precipice. Run back to the diner, or stand with these men, defending the humanity the world denied them. Diesel moved to the door, shotgun in hand now, loaded with quiet intent. Rook's voice crackled over a radio on the table, scouts confirming 3 bikes, Iron Wolves colors, probing the perimeter. Talon's eyes met Elena's, a silent question in the firelight. Go now. Get the supplies. We'll hold. But as she stood, Jax's grip tightened one last time, his whisper ragged. Family, Elena. Your family. She slipped out into the mist, the truck's keys cold in her palm, engine roaring to life as headlights pierced the dark. The road twisted downward, rain slicking the asphalt, her mind a storm of fear and fierce resolve. Behind her, engines growled closer, the clash inevitable, contained fury, meeting quiet compassion in the night's embrace. The diner waited, a fragile haven, but the pull of loyalty dragged her forward, toward Harlan's, toward the heart of the fray. In the rear view, the cabin faded, but the bond held, a raven's wing against the gathering wolves. The rain intensified, drumming on the roof like war drums, as Elena accelerated into the unknown, her trembling hand steady on the wheel. Redemption wasn't a distant shore. It was this road, fraught and real, where outcasts found their strength in the choice to protect. The rain lashed the windshield like a furious confession, turning the coastal road into a blurred vein of black and silver. Elena's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles aching from the strain, the truck's engine a steady growl beneath the storm's roar. Harlan's place was 10 miles inland, a squat clinic nestled among pines that whispered secrets in the wind, but every curve felt like a lifetime, the rear-view mirror taunting her with the empty dark behind. Jax's words echoed. Family, your family. A tether pulling her back even as fear propelled her forward. Sophia waited at the diner with Manny, safe for now, but the thought of her daughter's trusting eyes fueled the fire in Elena's chest, transforming dread into a quiet, unyielding resolve. She reached Harlan's just as lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the clinic's faded sign like a warning flare. The doc was closing up, his sedan already idling in the lot, but he paused at her frantic knock, face creasing under the porch light's harsh glow. Rain soaked her through, plastering her shirt to her skin, the chill seeping into her bones. Elena, what's this hour? Jax, she said, breath ragged, words tumbling out in a rush. The fever, the safe house, the rivals closing in. Harlan's eyes narrowed, but there was no judgment, only the weary understanding of a man who'd patched too many shadows. He didn't hesitate, disappearing inside and returning with a duffel. Antibiotics, morphine, bandages wrapped tight. Tell Talon this squares us. War debt from So 3. His hand on her arm was steady, a father's grip. Drive careful. And Elena, end this cycle. No more ghosts. She nodded, the bag heavy against her hip as she dashed back to the truck, mud sucking at her boots. The drive back was a descent into chaos, the storm mirroring the turmoil inside. Waves of grief for Raoul crashing against the fierce loyalty she'd claimed as her own. The Reapers weren't just survivors. They were the hands that had steadied her husband's truck in the night, unseen but vital. Saving Jax had unraveled her isolation, weaving her into a tapestry of outcasts who chose protection over indifference. But as the cabin's faint lights pierced the fog ahead, engines' distant thunder joined the rain. Her heart clenched. Confrontation inevitable, compassion the only shield. Talon met her at the tree line, his face slick with rain, eyes wild in the truck's headlights. They're here. Wolves. 5 strong, Vance leading. Pinned us down, but we got Jax inside. Gunfire popped muffled through the downpour, sharp cracks that sent birds scattering from the pines. Elena's pulse thundered, but she thrust the bag at him, her voice cutting through the gale. Supplies. Get to Jax. I'll draw them off. Back road circles the cove. Talon's gaze locked on hers, a beat of stunned respect flashing before resolve hardened it. No, you're not. But she was already moving, keys jangling as she fired up the truck again, the engine's roar a challenge to the night. He grabbed her arm, rain streaming down his beard. Why? This ain't your fight. It is now, she said, the words raw. Born from the revelation that bound her to them, Raoul's promise, Sophia's drawings, the quiet code of those on the margins. Go, protect your brother. Talon released her, vanishing into the mist with the bag, while Elena gunned the truck toward the perimeter, headlights sweeping the underbrush like searchlights. The iron wolves were shadows in the storm, bikes hidden among the rocks. Vance's silhouette unmistakable, broad and vengeful, his face twisted in the lightning strobe. He stepped into the road as she approached, blocking her path, a pistol glinting in his fist. Rain hammered down, turning the ground to slurry, the air thick with salt and gunpowder's bite. Reaper bitch, he snarled, voice carrying over the wind, eyes burning with old hatred. Hand over Harlan. This ends tonight. Elena killed the engine, stepping out into the deluge, her hands raised but steady, water cascading from her hair like tears she wouldn't shed. The other wolves flanked him, leathers sodden, faces masks of loyalty to a man who'd twisted survival into spite. Jax isn't yours to take, she called, voice unwavering, the storm's howl amplifying her words. War's over, Vance. You came home broken. Blame the desert, not him. He laughed, bitter and hollow, stepping closer, the gun steady. He left me in the sand. Reapers stole what was mine. And you, playing savior, get out or join the ghosts. But his eyes flickered, recognition, perhaps, of the woman Raoul had spoken of in passing, the anchor he'd envied in Jax's tales. Lightning illuminated the standoff, thunder rumbling like an approaching herd. From the shadows, engines revved. Talon, Rook, Diesel bursting from cover, bikes leaping the underbrush in a symphony of fury and precision. No wild charge, but a contained storm. Rook flanking left, Diesel right, Talon straight on, their presence a wall of quiet justice. Vance whirled, firing wild into the rain, but the Reapers closed methodically, disarming 2 wolves with precise tackles, the muffled sounds of struggle lost to the gale. Elena moved then, heart pounding, grabbing a fallen branch as Vance lunged toward her. She swung low, cracking his knee, the impact jarring up her arms like fate's own hammer. He crumpled, cursing, the gun skittering into the mud. Talon was on him in seconds, pinning him with a knee to the chest. Rage leashed to mercy. Enough, Vance. Ride out, or we end it here. The rival leader glared up, rain mixing with blood from a split lip, but the fire dimmed, defeat etching lines deeper than war ever had. "This ain't over," he spat, but his men were retreating, bikes firing up in hasty retreat, engines fading into the storm. Vance shoved Talon's hand away, staggering to his feet, a ghost of the soldier Jax had saved. "Tell Harlan, truce, for the sand." He mounted his bike, the pack vanishing down the back trail, leaving only the rain's relentless patter and the scent of wet earth. Elena collapsed against the truck, breaths coming in sobs she didn't fight, the adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion. Talon approached, clapping her shoulder gently, his voice gravel-soft. "You stood, like one of us." Inside the cabin, Jax waited, fever breaking under the new meds, his eyes clear when she entered, gratitude blooming into something deeper, forgiveness shared, losses honored. Dawn broke clear, the storm's fury spent, sunlight gilding the waves below the cliffs. The Reapers rode out at first light, Jax upright on a spare bike, arm in a proper cast, his nod to Elena a silent vow. The town would whisper, but the diner stood untouched, Manny's stew simmering as if nothing had shifted. Sophia greeted her with a hug, oblivious, her latest drawing a raven and dragon soaring together over the sea. In the quiet aftermath, Elena traced Raoul's photo, the envelope's cash now a fund for Sophia's future. Loyalty's quiet reward. Compassion had bridged the chasms, revealing strength not in leather or engines, but in the choice to reach across the void. The road stretched on, but she no longer walked it alone. Redemption came in the brotherhood of the overlooked, where justice whispered softer than thunder, and hearts beat true beneath the scars. The waves rolled in, carrying away the night's shadows, leaving only the hum of possibility on the horizon. Subscribe for more stories of compassion, justice, and redemption. Thank you for watching the case of the woman who saved the Shadow Reaper. See you in the next one.